Well, howdy there, Internet people. It's Dee again, and welcome to the Interstate with Dee. Today is Saturday, January 18th, 2025. Welcome back to our trip on the Interstate. What we do here is present news from the state level that will end up having national importance later, or news that made it into the national news cycle but was overshadowed. Then we go over some questions from y'all. On this date, January 18th, in 1957, three B 52s completed the first non-stop round-the-world flight in 45 hours and 19 minutes. Okay, and on to the news. A bill in Alabama would require those seeking marriage licenses to attend a class on conflict resolution. A flight attendant working for Alaska Airlines was reportedly fired for twerking on an aircraft for a TikTok video. Arizona's Governor, Katie Hobbs, is pushing for increased accountability in the state's voucher program, which she called a billion-dollar boondoggle. In California, residents are worried by constant rhetoric from Republicans suggesting they should tie wildfire relief funding to other Republican legislative priorities. The good news is that forecasts say the weather seems to be cooperating, and the wind should be easing before picking back up. Colorado Representative Lauren Boebert has introduced a bill to abolish the ATF. In Georgia, a Southwest Airlines pilot was reportedly arrested for DUI before a flight. Reports say the pilot has been removed from duty. Elsewhere in Georgia, State Senator Colton Moore was arrested after an altercation in which he was thrown to the ground while trying to enter an area the governor was speaking in. Moore was banned from the House floor after making disparaging comments about the late House Speaker David Ralston in 2024. The governor of Indiana has ended remote work for state employees. Elsewhere in the state, and in Illinois, and maybe the state of New Illinois, a push from some counties in Illinois to separate from their state has led the Indiana Speaker of the House to suggest the unhappy counties join Indiana. Louisiana's governor is removing homeless people prior to the Super Bowl. Minnesota's state house is an absolute mess right now, with Democrats boycotting and Republicans trying to operate without a quorum, according to the Secretary of State. This is headed to court. At issue is a single House seat that is still facing legal challenge. That seat will determine whether the state House is Republican-controlled or evenly split. In New York, deputies in Syracuse handcuffed someone they said fit the description of a suspected car thief. Footage of the 11-year-old girl being detained has gone viral. A lot of you sent messages asking for information about her and how you could support her, and they all seem to be very well-meaning. That being said, even if we had contact information, we would never release information about a child. But for further information, the New York Civil Liberties Union has gotten involved and the department has said they are drafting a new policy. Also, former New York City Mayor Rudolph Giuliani did not show up to a court appearance, sparking a lot of curiosity. It was then later stated that he had reached a settlement with the election workers. In North Carolina, some of those still receiving temporary shelter in hotels after the hurricane were kicked out, even though FEMA had extended their temporary shelter through March. Somewhere there was a massive miscommunication. Expect hearings about this. In Ohio, a woman who was arrested after a miscarriage has reportedly filed suit against some medical professionals and a cop. A grand jury did not return an indictment in the case she was arrested for, and she is now alleging 4th and 14th Amendment violations. Elsewhere in Ohio, a massive weapons manufacturing plant named Arsenal 1 will be opened near Columbus. It will be a drone super factory. In South Carolina, a high school basketball coach was arrested after he allegedly tried to bring a gun into the school gym after an altercation with another coach. In Tennessee, Senator Marsha Blackburn is reportedly looking at running for the governor's office. In Wisconsin, immigration authorities have plans to turn an office building into a detention center in Milwaukee. Residents and activists are speaking out against the move. This seems like something that might set the tone for future developments and is probably worth watching. For those wanting to find out more, it looks like Alderwoman Larissa Taylor of the 9th District is becoming pivotal in the discussion. And here's your weird state fact for this week. There's a town called Santa Claus, Indiana. Tens of thousands of letters to Santa are directed there yearly. And since 1914, elves have written the children back. Okay, so moving on to the question and answer portion of the show. Question number 1. I am sharing some news articles about some Republican-driven government shenanigans happening in Minnesota in the event that the topic may be of interest to D. The short way to describe it is an illegitimate power grab in defiance of the state's Secretary of State's clear determination that the Minnesota House does not have quorum and the Republicans ignoring him to elect their own speaker. There will likely be lawsuits. I'm really just sharing that one to let y'all know I do get these tips and I really appreciate them. Keeping track of 50 states, plus other territories, is time intensive, and getting a heads up about events really helps. Question number 2 is also not really a question, but worth mentioning. In a recent video, I talked about South Dakota having very lax residency requirements. Here's a viewpoint not everybody will think of. Just more of a comment, I guess. I'm one of those South Dakota residents. Something very underappreciated about the South Dakota situation is that South Dakota nomad residency is an important tool used to keep abuse victims safe from their stalkers, etc., and allow them to live relatively private lives. It's the closest thing a normal person can get to witness protection. Abuse victims generally don't care about elections in a state they don't live in. Okay. That looks like it. We'll see you next week for another trip. Y'all have a good day.